then we'll invite you to ask questions. We have a mic stand here, so please come to the mic, present yourself, name your media, and then ask your question. The floor is yours.
Yes. I see so many smartphones in front of me and I feel tempted. Good morning. It's my pleasure to be in Phnom Penh today, and I've been here for the last 2 days because Ukraine believes that relations with ASEAN countries is one of the priorities of our foreign policy. On the very first day of my presence here, I had the honor of being received by Prime Minister of Cambodia and hold bilateral talks with him in follow-up to his conversation with President Zelensky. I also signed the instrument of accession of Ukraine to the Treaty on Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia. You may well know that the agreement for a country to become a partner of ASEAN requires consensual support by ASEAN members. And we are glad that it is during Cambodian chairmanship that this signing became reality and consensus was secured. We take it as a message of support, a political message of support by ASEAN countries to Ukraine. The issue of Ukraine joining TAC was on the agenda for some years, but finally it's done, and it brings our relations with ASEAN countries to the new level. We will explore and utilize all opportunities of building a deeper relationship with ASEAN countries in political, trade, business to business, and food security. These are all priorities for both us and ASEAN countries. And of course, my visit to ASEAN Summit is also an opportunity to hold bilateral talks with foreign ministers of ASEAN countries. We are seeing colleagues, we're seeing each other with colleagues, talking, explaining each other the position and the perception of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, finding common ground, identifying spheres of mutual interest. So the normal classic diplomacy stuff is happening. I think this will be it, right? Okay.
Okay, colleagues, please go to the mic.
Good morning. I'm Liza from Cambodia. May I have a few questions? First is, what do you think the ASEAN members can contribute to the ongoing happening in Ukraine? And second is, will you meet your Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov during the summit? And the last one is, Cambodian ASEAN members are calling Russia and Ukraine to go back to the negotiating table. Is your government going to answer that call?
As I mentioned in my introductory remarks, our cooperation with ASEAN countries spans all range of issues. Politically, of course, the litmus test is the voting in the UN General Assembly for resolutions related to Ukraine. But there are other forms of expressing political support to Ukraine by ASEAN countries, and as I mentioned, accession of Ukraine to TAC is one of them. Of course, we call on ASEAN countries to condemn the Russian aggression against Ukraine, because this is not just an attack against a sovereign country. This is also an attack on UN Charter and the principles of territorial integrity, sovereignty, non-use of force. All of these principles are very acute to ASEAN countries. I am absolutely confident that none of ASEAN countries is interested in seeing any country following the pattern of behavior of Russia here in Asia. Violation of borders, use of force, committing mass atrocities against civilian population. If anyone in the world sees that Russia can get away easily with all of this, then this someone will be tempted to follow the suit, to follow this pattern. And this is definitely against the interests of ASEAN. So it is in the best interests of ASEAN countries to help Ukraine defend all of this, those on the battleground in Ukraine, by supporting our country in this struggle, and politically in the international arena. Another important topic, which is more than just about trade in grain, it's a political issue, is the export of Ukrainian agricultural products to the global market through the so-called grain corridor, grain initiative, Black Sea initiative, facilitated by the UN Secretary General and President of Turkey. Russia must remain part of this initiative. There is going to the memorandum on the establishment of which is going to expire soon. But it's not enough just to keep Russia on board. It's also important to make sure that Russian inspectors who participate in this initiative, they act in good faith and that they inspect ships without any artificial delays to allow a free outflow of Ukrainian grain, corn, sunflower oil and other agricultural products to the global market, to keep prices under control in Africa, in Asia, but also to save millions of people from famine. And this is, I called on all ASEAN members to take every measure possible to stop Russia from playing hunger games with the world. The grain corridor should be exempted from the conflict. Whatever happens on the battleground, Russia should not use this corridor as a blackmail, as a leverage in international relations, as it tried to do recently by withdrawing and then returning to the grain initiative under pressure from some good countries and institutions. You speaking about Minister Lavrov, he did not ask for a meeting, as it usually happens in diplomacy. If he does, we will thoroughly consider his request, taking into account all aspects and reality on the ground. When it comes to the effort of anyone, not only ASEAN countries, to put Ukraine at the table with Russia, every war ends with an act of diplomacy. And despite all the crimes committed by Russia in the territory of Ukraine, and I want you to know that every time we liberate a piece of our territory, when we enter a city liberated from Russian army, we find torture rooms and mass graves with civilians tortured and murdered by Russian army in the course of the occupation of these territories. It's not easy to speak with people like this, but I said that every war acts with diplomacy, ends with diplomacy. And Russia has to approach talks in good faith. As of now, everything we see is the attempt of Russia to use negotiations, to use calls for negotiations as a smokescreen for its continued aggression on the ground. And I can assure you that the Russian behavior, the Russian pattern of behavior is the same. If they attack peaceful Ukrainian cities and our civilian energy infrastructure in the morning with their missiles, make no mistake, in the evening someone from Russia will remind everyone that they are open for negotiations. If you hear someone in the evening in Moscow speaking about negotiations, make no mistake, there will be a missile attack in the morning. So this is the pattern that we don't want Russians to help play with. They have to get out of Ukraine, they have to approach negotiations in good faith, as simple as that. Thank you.
Next question, please.
Excuse me, sir, this is from NXTV. Now the Russian military from Kherson has completed the overtake.
Can you speak louder, a little bit louder?
Okay, this is from NXTV, and now Russia's retreat from Kherson has completed overtake on that. And I think it's time that Ukraine is considering talking with President Zelensky, or under which conditions will peace talks is held.
We won the battle for Kherson, and I wish all of you could see, and you can find it on the social media, by the way, how residents of the liberated territories welcome Ukrainian soldiers with tears of joy, and how Ukrainian flag returns to these liberated territories. This is yet another battle that we have won. I would like to remind you that since the beginning of the war, we won the battle for Kiev. We forced Russia to retreat from the northeast of Ukraine. We won the battle for Kharkiv region. We won the battle for Kherson and the part of the Kherson region on the right bank of Ukraine. We also on the right bank of the Dnipro River. The victory in Kherson also means the liberation of the Mykolaiv region, and the capital, the regional capital of this region, the city of Mykolaiv, was systemically destroyed by Russian missile and artillery fire before we pushed the Russians back to the safe distance. So we are winning battles on the ground, but the war continues. Yes, the morale in Ukraine is very high. Our army will continue to liberate our territory because we are fighting a defensive war against an enemy who invaded our country. I have no doubts in the eventual outcome of this war. Ukraine will prevail. It's only a matter of time and a price. And yes, some gains are being achieved militarily, but some gains of Ukraine will be achieved diplomatically. Ukraine does not speak against negotiations. Ukraine speaks for fair negotiations in good faith with a country that will accept a very simple reality, that territorial integrity of Ukraine is not something that can be discussed or become a subject of concessions. Every square inch of Ukrainian land will be liberated.
Next question.
Hi, Danielle Keith-Wilson from DOD in Phnom Penh. So Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen had offered Cambodia as a location for peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Is that under consideration?
I already answered that question. We appreciate the position that Cambodia has taken since 24th of February, because this country suffered so much from conflict, from foreign invasion. During my stay in Phnom Penh, I feel the sympathy of the people of Cambodia. I feel that the political leadership of Cambodia understands very well what Ukraine is going through. And we are pleased to see how Cambodia supports us in the United Nations. We are grateful to the Prime Minister of Cambodia for initiating the project of demining in Ukraine, and Cambodian experts will be deployed to, I think, Poland to help us to improve our capacity to demine our territory from the Russian mines. Guys, I understand you're all focused about big deals and big deals and big negotiations. There are many simple issues which require a lot of quiet diplomacy, such as grain deal, such as exchange of prisoners. These are the things that can work if countries focus on achieving results and find leverages on Russia. we do not see, there is not a single indicator that Russia is sincerely seeking negotiations. Sitting down at the table for the nice picture, we've been there, we've done it, we tried. I would like to bring you back to the first months of the war and all attempts, numerous attempts of Ukraine to negotiate with Russia. The only response we always received from them, even when we sat down at the table, was, here is the list of ultimatums, take it or leave it. And the set of these ultimatums meant full capitulation and unconditional surrender of Ukraine. This is not how negotiations happen. Negotiations are about seeking mutually acceptable solutions. Russia always turned down requests and calls by my president, President Zelensky, to hold a bilateral meeting with President Putin. We were very vocal about it. We called on Russia, on President Putin, to sit down and talk. We were rejected. As of now, we do not see that Russia is interested in genuine negotiations. As I said, they are using the subject of negotiations as a smokescreen for their continued aggression against Ukraine. We need talks for the sake of result, not for the sake of just making a picture of two ministers sitting at one table.
Okay, next question.
Monica Kanapini from the Straits Times Singapore. President Zelensky mentioned that Ukraine would remain a guarantor of food security for ASEAN. Could you elaborate on that pledge, please?
In the beginning of the war, Russia blocked the export of basically any export or import through Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea. That completely knocked out the export of Ukrainian food to the global market, and we saw the results. Prices went high, countries suffering from the shortage of food were put to the brink of famine. Despite all the difficulties we are suffering, we suffered on the battleground, we always insisted that exports of Ukrainian agricultural products should continue. And this is how we found two solutions. The first one was the establishment of land corridors to the ports in Poland and in Romania. So Ukrainian grain was taken by land through Poland and Romania to ports of these countries on the Baltic Sea and on the Black Sea, and then loaded on ships and sent worldwide. The problem with those corridors was that they were the bottlenecks. They could not accommodate the sufficient amount of Ukrainian grain that had to be exported. The second solution was the grain initiative, brokered by the UN Secretary General and President of Turkey. Since then, things got much better and prices were stabilized. Against all odds and despite all the difficulties we suffer ourselves, we are committed to the purpose of remaining a food security guarantor. And this is why in September we made a difficult but absolutely necessary decision to provide humanitarian aid to Somalia and Ethiopia, who suffer from hunger, whose people suffer from hunger. And this grain, humanitarian aid, will soon be delivered to these countries and will bring relief for people who suffer there. We remain absolutely committed to continue playing this role, and our proposal to countries in Africa and in Asia is to identify their needs to us and we will be seeking for ways to deliver this grain, or maybe sunflower oil or corn, depends on the region, to these markets. The only issue is that Russia has to continue its presence in the grain initiative. This corridor must continue its functioning. But there is also a second element in it. Russian inspectors who represent this country in the grain initiative, they resort to the practice of quiet sabotage. When, for example, inspections of ships take too much time because of the behavior of Russian inspectors, and therefore the grain corridor cannot function at its full capacity. There were days when hundreds of vessels were stranded, trying either to access the seaports in Ukraine or to leave the Black Sea already loaded with Ukrainian grain because of endless Russian inspections. During 2 days, when the grain corridor functioned without Russian inspectors after their withdrawal, Ukrainian, Turkish, and UN inspectors cleared more vessels than during the same period with the presence of Russian inspectors. So not only Russia has to remain part of the initiative, it also has to instruct its inspectors to act in good faith and to avoid any measures, any steps that create obstacles and hinder the export of Ukrainian agricultural products to the global market. Our position is simple. The grain corridor should be exempted from the war. Whatever happens, Russia on the battleground, Russia should not be using blackmail of withdrawing from the grain initiative as a leverage. Food security and availability of bread to the people must enjoy full international protection. And Russia must stop playing Hunger Games with the world. Thank you.
Next question, please.
This is Japan Broadcasting Corporation. I have two questions. One is, what is your decision of taking part in the East Asia Summit starting tomorrow, and what is the reason for that? My second question is, did you name the countries you had a bilateral meeting in the past days, and what is the achievement with those bilateral talks?
Sorry, can you repeat the second question because it was loud and I couldn't hear you.
Would you name the countries you had a bilateral meeting in the past days?
Okay.
And what is your achievements through those meetings?
Okay. This is the first time that Ukraine was invited to the ASEAN summit. And we appreciate this opportunity. Being in Phnom Penh these days is the same as doing an Asia tour. Because not only did I meet my Cambodian counterparts and colleagues, but I was also given an opportunity to reach out to other ASEAN members and other countries present here in Phnom Penh on the occasion of the summit. I just concluded my meeting with the Prime Minister of Australia, for example, before coming here to this press briefing. I started my day with the Foreign Minister of Indonesia. I met with foreign ministers of Philippines, of course Cambodia, Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand. I'm going to see Foreign Minister of Laos. So basically I'm covering, I have the opportunity to meet everyone here, and I appreciate it. Our conversations focus on three issues: political support, the support these countries can provide to Ukraine to address the issue of the destruction of Ukrainian energy system by Russian missiles and Iranian drones, which Russia is using actively and massively on the battleground. And you have to understand one thing, when these missiles and drones attack critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure in Ukraine, it has no military purpose whatsoever. It's only about civilians. I live in Kiev, in an apartment building, as millions of Ukrainians do. And my apartment building is being blacked out every day for at least 4 or 6 hours because there is a shortage of electricity in the system as a result of Russian attacks. It's not as warm in Kiev as in Phnom Penh now. It's +5, +7, and chilly. And radiators in our apartments are cold because pumps pumping up water to the radiators are dysfunctional because of the lack of electricity, because of the Russian attacks. So when Russia attacks our critical energy infrastructure, they have the purpose to create unbearable conditions for civilians as winter approaches. And therefore, I have asked even those colleagues who do not consider military and defense cooperation with us under these circumstances to provide spare parts, transformers, and generators to Ukraine as humanitarian aid to help us compensate the destruction caused by Russia and ensure that the country can continue live its life. Hospitals, schools, apartment buildings, we need to ensure that they have access to electricity. The third issue is food security and trade in a broader sense. The war goes on, but life also goes on. And we're exploring new opportunities with ASEAN countries on how to improve trade, even under these dire circumstances. And as I already mentioned, how can we better cooperate on ensuring food security of Asian region? I think it will be too premature to discuss the specific results of this conversation. Some of them have the results, others were just, the exchange of views and proposals. Ministers will go back to their capitals and consider these proposals, and we will be looking forward to receiving a feedback from them.
Okay, next question.
Yes, thank you. Anthony Ellis from EAC News, which is everything about Cambodia and Phnom Penh. My question is, with the ASEAN members, of course, have condemned the invasion, but not all of them have agreed with the sanctions. Have you had a chance to speak to them and how your opinion, how important you think those sanctions are and why they don't agree with that? And you also said that the Foreign Minister has not approached you while he's here for a meeting. Have you approached them and asked them for a meeting to discuss it?
Listen, I told you that we made so many attempts to approach them, to convince them in the need to stop the war and withdraw from Ukraine. It is their turn now. I would like to remind everyone, it's not us who attacked them. It's not Ukrainian soldiers who raped, tortured, killed and looted. It was Russian soldiers doing it in the territory of Ukraine, everywhere where they come. And you can take any UN report or any reports by human rights defenders. All these atrocities are confirmed. You can refer to the International Criminal Court, and they also confirm these atrocities. So the Russians can say 100 times, it's not us, we didn't do it, it's all fake, it was all staged. But facts speak for the opposite. And your first question was on?
The first question was that the Asian members oppose, of course, the invasion, but not all of them oppose the
The sanctions, yes,
Yeah,
on sanctions.
have you had a chance to...
Yeah, sanctions work. Circumvention of sanctions doesn't work, though we are aware of Russia to circumvent sanctions through various countries. It is true to say that not everyone, especially here in Asia, supports the sanctions regime. They're doing it for political reasons. Some do it because of their own concerns and their own general attitude towards sanctions. I brought up this issue in bilateral meetings. But as I said, there are various forms of how to support Ukraine. The worst thing that a country can do is to do nothing. You can always find a way to express your support. But saying we're distancing ourselves from this because we want to be friends with both Russia and Ukraine, so we're not going to do anything at all, I believe this goes against very basic, very fundamental and genuine interests of these countries too, because as I mentioned in my opening remarks or answering one of your questions, what is happening is not just about Ukraine. It's about answering a question. Will a big country have the right to invade a smaller country? I'm sure that every nation present, every Eastern Asian nation doesn't want that to happen. They want rules to be respected. They want big players to play by the rules. And guys, if you want to make it happen, you have to support Ukraine. You have to find a way to support Ukraine in its struggle. Be it the UN, be it in the United Nations General Assembly, or bilaterally, or by providing weapons to Ukraine, or by trading with Ukraine, or by sending humanitarian aid to Ukraine. There is a toolkit of what can be done, and sanctions is one of them. Thank you.
Okay, next question.
Hello, sir. I'm Amanda from the Australian newspaper. You said, I've had two questions for you. You said that evacuating Prime Minister Albanese. I'm wondering if you can tell me, did Ukraine ask for anything more from Australia? Is there any more that Australia can do? My second question is, you've come to this summit this weekend. China is going to be attending a leader summit here in Cambodia. Have you sought or will you seek a meeting with China to ask them to use their influence with Russia to end their aggression in Ukraine?
Well, I thanked your Prime Minister. I informed him that Bushmaster became the most popular Australian brand in Ukraine. I asked him to continue supporting Ukraine. I proposed to him to support Ukraine militarily. Also, I proposed to him a joint effort to help African countries to mitigate the consequences of the food shortage and famine. And I also asked for help in the area of energy infrastructure.
Can you elaborate on
Transformers, I mentioned them, transformers, generators, spare parts for electricity grid. These are very technical things, and they are all of humanitarian purpose. They are all of humanitarian purpose. So this is a humanitarian aid. It has nothing to do with military aid.
And did he say he would do that?
He assured me that Australia will continue supporting Ukraine in practical terms. He took the list of our energy needs. He promised that he will immediately instruct appropriate members of his government to consider it, because it's a very special technical issue. You know, in the first half of the war, I became an expert as a diplomat. I also became an expert in weapons. And now, in the last months, I'm becoming an expert in electricity, energy, and all of this stuff. So, as eloquently as I quote different types of weapons and calibers, give me another week, and I will be equally eloquent in quoting transformators, surge stoppers, generators, transformers, and the difference between them. I was interested in seeing Foreign Minister of China here in Phnom Penh, and we were working on organizing a bilateral meeting with him. The last time we spoke was at the UN General Assembly. I was informed 2 days ago that he was not coming, and we will be seeking for another occasion to speak. But yes, we are talking with China, we are maintaining dialogue to make sure that China uses its leverages on Russia to make them stop the war. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for very last question. Somebody has a question? Okay. So, no questions more, so we have time.
Cool. Thank you guys. Enjoy the summit and stay safe. Bye-bye.